Garfa, Kolkata, a quiet neighborhood that slept early and woke to the sound of temple bells. But one morning, those bells were drowned by the screams of a neighbor, a scream that would echo across the city. Inside a modest two-story home, a woman lay motionless on the floor. Blood soaked the marble tiles. The scent of incense still hung in the air, fighting a losing battle against the smell of death. Her name was Rita Day, a 45-year-old housewife known for her gentle smile, her morning pujas, and her kindness to every stray cat on the street. But that morning, kindness had met cruelty. The door hadn't been forced. The windows were locked from the inside. There was no sign of robbery. It was as if death had come from within. Police rushed in, cameras flashing, neighbors whispering, and standing among the crowd was Tushar Majumdar, a calm, well-dressed man in his late 30s. A school teacher, a husband, a father, a man everyone in Garfa trusted. He held his son's hand tightly as he watched the commotion, his face blank, emotionless, like someone observing a distant tragedy. But behind that stillness something dark flickered, something he had tried for years to bury. The investigation began as routine. A murder in a safe neighborhood always points inward, someone close, someone trusted. Police interviewed friends, family, neighbors, and Tushar, ever the helpful neighbor, offered tea to the officers, guided them through what little he knew. He said he'd seen Rita that morning, smiling as always, heading home from the market. He said he barely knew her beyond small talk. He said all the right things. But when investigators looked closer, the model neighbor began to look too perfect. Rita's husband was out of town. Her phone showed messages, dozens of them, from a number saved under a false name. Sweet messages, romantic ones, angry ones, and when traced, the number belonged to Tushar Majumdar. At first, police thought it was impossible. Tushar had a wife, a job, a clean record. He was the man everyone trusted with their children's homework. But digital trails don't lie. It turned out that for months, he had been living a double life. Teaching by day, deceiving by night. He had met Rita at a local tuition center where she sometimes helped organize events. It began innocently, conversations, smiles, shared loneliness. But soon, those smiles turned into secrets, and secrets turned into chains. Rita had wanted more. Tushar had promised her everything: love, a future, escape. But promises made in whispers rarely survive daylight. When she discovered the truth that he was lying about leaving his wife, she threatened to expose him. She had written it all down in her diary: dates, times, threats. And on the last page, she wrote only one line: if anything happens to me, it won't be an accident. That diary would later be found hidden beneath her bed, stained with her own blood. Police now had motive, opportunity, and a suspect who was suddenly too nervous to meet their eyes. But there was still no physical evidence. No fingerprints, no eyewitnesses, no murder weapon. And so, Tushar played his part well. The grieving friend, the innocent man caught in rumors. He even attended Rita's funeral, standing quietly as her family wept, offering condolences he didn't mean. But those who looked closely noticed how still he stood, how cold his eyes were as the coffin was lowered into the ground, as if the burial gave him not grief but relief. In the days that followed, whispers spread through Garfa. Neighbors began to recall strange things. How Tushar sometimes returned home at odd hours. How he'd been seen arguing with Rita outside her gate weeks before her death. And how his wife, Mita, had started avoiding eye contact with anyone who mentioned Rita's name. One evening, Mita came to the police station, her hands trembling, her face pale. She didn't say much, just placed something on the officer's desk. A gold bracelet, Rita's bracelet. She had found it hidden in Tushar's car. That changed everything. Investigators searched his home, his car, his phone. Behind a false compartment in his cupboard, they found clothes bloodstained, and beneath his bed, a single shoe with a reddish smear. DNA would later confirm it was Rita's blood. The mask began to crack. Tushar claimed he was being framed. He said he had been helping Rita financially, that someone was trying to ruin him. But his lies couldn't keep up with the evidence. Still, something didn't fit. The brutality of the murder, the rage behind it. It didn't seem like the work of a calm, educated man. It seemed personal, possessive, obsessive. Investigators began to reconstruct the timeline. On the night of the murder, phone data showed Tushar's number pinging near Rita's home just minutes before she died. Her door was locked from the inside. There were no signs of struggle outside. It was someone she had let in willingly. Someone she trusted. Someone like him. The crime scene revealed a chilling detail. The framed photo on the table, Rita and Tushar smiling together at a local fair. He had been careful to erase everything, but not that, as if part of him wanted to be remembered. And as police pieced it all together, they realized This wasn't just a crime of passion. It was a crime of control. Tushar couldn't let go of the woman who had once believed his lies. And when she threatened to expose him, his perfect life began to crack. He chose silence over truth, murder over shame. But as investigators prepared to arrest him, something unexpected happened. Tushar disappeared. His phone went dead. His family said he never came home. And by the time police reached his usual routes, he was gone like smoke in the wind. Only his car remained, abandoned near a railway crossing outside Garfa. Inside, officers found a blood-stained note. It read, "She made me do it, but they'll never find me." And with that, Kolkata plunged into fear. A respected teacher had turned into a fugitive, a murderer hiding among them, and the truth was only beginning to surface. Because Tushar Majender hadn't just lived 2 lives, he had mastered them. The news spread like wildfire through Garfa. Teacher turned murderer, psychopath in the neighborhood. Every newspaper printed his name. Every TV channel showed his picture smiling in a pressed shirt, holding his son during a school event. The kind of photo that made you question how evil could ever wear such a gentle face. But by the time the world knew his name, Tushar Majender had vanished. For weeks, the city police launched a manhunt. Checkpoints, abandoned houses, railway stations, everywhere his name echoed. But he was always one step ahead. He had planned it meticulously. Cash withdrawn, SIM card destroyed, identity buried beneath false papers. It was as if Tushar had rehearsed his escape long before he killed. The investigators began to realize something chilling. This wasn't a crime of impulse. It was a performance. Every move, every lie, every smile had been scripted. In the police files, one note stood out. Tushar had a fascination with criminal psychology. Old colleagues mentioned how he used to discuss serial killers during breaks, how they think, how they evade capture, how they manipulate emotion. At the time, they thought it was just curiosity. Now, it felt like prophecy. Detective Arindam Saha, leading the case, couldn't shake off one feeling. Tushar hadn't run to disappear. He had run to watch, to enjoy the chaos he created, to see his name whispered in fear, to feel powerful. Meanwhile, his wife, Mita, faced the storm alone. Neighbors stopped talking to her. Parents pulled their children away from her son at school. Every night, she'd wake up to the sound of knocking, reporters, police, strangers asking where he was. But she knew as little as they did, or at least, that's what she claimed. Until one night, she received a letter. No name, no address. Just a small envelope slipped under her door. Inside, 5 words written in his handwriting. "Don't let them find me," she screamed, and the police rushed to her home. The envelope had no fingerprints, no trace of him, but it confirmed what Arindam feared the most. Tushar was still in Kolkata. Days turned into weeks. And then another discovery. A security guard at a cheap motel near the outskirts reported a strange guest. A man with a trimmed beard, wearing a cap low over his face, paying in cash. He stayed only at night, left before dawn. When police searched the room, they found a discarded shirt and on it, a faint trace of blood. DNA confirmed it belonged to Rita Day. The walls were closing in, but Tushar didn't panic. He had that day. He began moving like a ghost, shifting places, altering his look, blending into the crowd. One moment a taxi driver, another a salesman, another a man feeding stray dogs near the very police station hunting him. It was as if he enjoyed the thrill of being unseen in plain sight. Detective Arindam spent nights rewatching every CCTV frame, every phone log, every trace of his voice. And then, a breakthrough. One footage showed a man near the railway crossing where his car was found. He was tossing something into a drain, something metallic. When officers drained the area, they found a blood-stained kitchen knife, its handle wrapped in tape. Rita's DNA. Tushar's fingerprints. The murder weapon. Now they had proof. But still no man. Behind the scenes, Mita's world began to crumble further. She was questioned, humiliated, followed. Her son was pulled from school. Bills piled up. And yet, every few nights, she felt someone watching her home. Sometimes she'd catch a shadow outside the gate. Sometimes the faint sound of someone whispering her name in the dark. Was it her guilt playing tricks? Or had the fugitive returned to the place he once called home? Then came the second shock. One night, a watchman near the old Garfapan reported seeing a man standing there motionless for hours. When police reached, all they found was a set of muddy footprints leading to the water, and floating on the surface Rita's missing mobile phone, wrapped in plastic. Forensics later revealed it hadn't been underwater for long. It had been placed there recently, meaning Tushar was back, taunting them. Inside the phone were photos, dozens of them. Some old pictures of Rita, some of Tushar with her, smiling. But the last photo was different. It was a selfie taken in the dark, only half of his face visible, smirking, and the timestamp showed it was taken 2 nights ago. He was still near Garfa, still haunting the city he once lived in, still watching everyone who dared to say his name. The next few days turned the investigation into a psychological war. Everywhere police went, Tushar seemed to have been there just hours before. A hotel receipt, a bus ticket, a discarded cigarette, all breadcrumbs leading nowhere. It was as if he was orchestrating a game, daring them to catch him. Detective Arrington began studying his past, his students, his family, his routine. He learned that Tushar had once told a friend, "There's nothing more thrilling than seeing how far you can go before they see who you truly are." That line replayed in Arrington's mind as he stared at the caseboard covered in photos, maps, and red string. This wasn't a man on the run. This was a psychopath performing his final act. But Tushar's arrogance would become his undoing. One afternoon, CCTV footage caught a figure slipping into an internet cafe near Jadapur. The owner said the man came to check exam results, but logs revealed he was searching something else. News about his own case. He wanted to know how famous he had become. Police traced the log in time and raided the area. And there, behind a small warehouse, they found a campfire still burning, and a bag filled with his fake ID, burner phones, and a single photograph of his wife and son smiling at a fair. He was close, too close to resist seeing them one last time. That night, officers surrounded his home in plain clothes. They waited in silence as the clock ticked past midnight, and just after 1:00 a.m., a shadow climbed over the back wall, barefoot, carrying a small bag, moving carefully toward the window where his son used to sleep. The light flicked on. Mita gasped, and before Tushar could move, the flashlight beam struck his face. The calm, the charm all gone. Only the wild eyes of a cornered animal remained. He tried to run, but Arrington tackled him to the ground. For a moment, everything was chaos. Screams, flashing lights, rain beginning to fall. And through it all, Tushar's voice broke the silence. He didn't beg. He didn't cry. He just smiled and whispered, "You'll never understand why I did it." The monster of Garfa was finally in chains. But the story wasn't over, because inside his bag, police found something that would twist the entire case. A black diary. Its pages filled with names, drawings, and a list. Each name belonged to a woman in Garfa, and one name at the bottom Mita Majumdar. The police realized with horror, Rita wasn't the first name on the list. She was the first victim discovered, and his own wife was supposed to be next. The interrogation room was silent. Only the low hum of a ceiling fan filled the air, slicing through the stillness like a heartbeat. Across the table sat Tushar Majumdar, hands cuffed, eyes empty. For the first time, the mask was gone. The polite teacher, the loving father, the helpful neighbor. All that remained was the shadow of the predator who had lived among them in plain sight. Detective Arrington sat opposite him, studying every twitch, every breath. He had spent months chasing the man across the city. Now, the killer sat inches away, smirking, calm and disturbingly proud. In front of him lay the black diary, the key to everything. Its pages told the story that no one saw coming, a story that began long before Rita Day ever entered his life. Each entry described a woman, how he met her, what drew him in, what made him choose her. He called them angels that lied. Every page ended with a chilling signature, lesson learned. And beside the names, dates, and chilling notes, police found sketches, faces, crosses, and words like control, betrayal, purity. This wasn't lust. This wasn't rage. It was obsession masquerading as love. Rita's name was marked with a red circle, and right below it Mita Majumdar, his wife. His next lesson. For hours, Arrington asked questions, but Tushar didn't answer them directly. He spoke in metaphors, about masks and truth, about how women lie with their eyes. Every sentence chilled the room. He said he lived two lives because the world demanded it. One for the people, gentle, obedient, admirable, and one for himself, dark, real, honest. The second life was his freedom, he claimed. His art. He had killed before, not always in Garfa, not always as brutal. He confessed to another case, a disappearance 5 years earlier in Howrah that was never solved. The victim was a tutor. He had buried her behind an old school ground. Police would later confirm that case matched his pattern exactly. The man wasn't a sudden killer. He was a psychopath who learned how to hide behind kindness. But something about his last entry didn't fit. The date beside Mita's name was 2 days after Rita's murder, meaning she was next, but something stopped him. When Arrington pressed him on that, Tushar's calm cracked. For the first time, his voice faltered. He said he came home that night after killing Rita, ready to end the life of the woman who had trapped him in normalcy. But when he saw his son asleep beside her, something shifted. He froze. He couldn't do it. Not that night. He left. And in that moment of hesitation, his perfect world fell apart. Rita's body was found. His plan collapsed. And so he ran not just from the law, but from his own weakness. The diary was enough to destroy whatever image he had left. Media swarmed the story. The psychopath of Garfa. Teacher by day, killer by night. Every headline carried the same photograph, his face, half lit, half shadowed, an image that captured the man he truly was. But for Mita, the real horror was not what he'd done, it was how close she had come to dying at his hands. How every smile, every dinner, every goodnight kiss had been shared with a man rehearsing her death in his mind. She broke down during her statement, clutching the diary to her chest as she whispered, "He never loved anyone. He loved control." The court later called him a manipulator of terrifying precision. But even inside the courtroom, Tushar never begged for mercy. He watched the proceedings like an audience member watching his own film, detached, entertained, superior. Until the day of sentencing, the judge read the verdict aloud. Guilty of premeditated murder. Life imprisonment. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. But Tushar smiled. That same faint, unsettling smile he wore the day he was caught. As if justice was just another scene in his story. But fate had one final twist left to write. 2 weeks after the sentencing, prison guards found him unconscious in his cell. He had slit his wrist with a sharpened piece of metal from his bed frame. No note, no last words, just a single symbol drawn on the wall in his blood. A circle with a cross through it. The same mark he used in his diary. The same mark he left beside every victim's name. He died the way he lived, controlling the ending, making sure it belonged to him. For Garfa, it was over. But the scars remained. The street where Rita lived stayed empty for months, windows locked, laughter gone. Neighbors still whispered his name like a curse. Mita and her son left the city quietly, their faces hidden from cameras. Their names changed. They carried not just grief, but the haunting realization that evil can wear the face of love. Detective Arundum closed the file one last time. He knew justice had been served, but not peace. Because deep down, he realized something unsettling. Tushar hadn't been born a monster. He had built himself into one piece by piece, lie by lie, until he became his own creation. Years later, Arundum would still think about him, about how ordinary he looked, about how normal his handwriting was, about how, in the end, every mask eventually cracks, not from force but from truth. And that's the real horror of the Garfa psychopath case. That beneath the quiet smiles, beneath the polite words, beneath the soft-spoken charm, sometimes lies a darkness that even the devil would envy. He lived 2 lives until the truth tore them both apart.